when his wife, Sarah, ran off with his best friend and business partner, Mark. Everyone in their quiet suburban neighborhood thought David Miller's life was over. They pitied him when his renovation business, Miller and Thompson, was seized by the bank. They whispered when the bright green foreclosure signs were hammered into his front lawn. To everyone else, David was finished. A bankrupt husband abandoned for someone richer, a man who'd lost his entire retirement savings and his home after his partners drained the company accounts and left him with mountains of debt. But behind the locked doors of the tiny, one-bedroom apartment he now called home, the truth waited. He watched them from his window, Sarah and Mark, celebrating their new life in their luxury car, never suspecting that the man they discarded was about to find the one thing they forgot to steal. It all changed the day he was sorting through a box of his late father's belongings. Tucked inside an old, leather-bound book was a sealed envelope. That letter held the secret of who David's father really was, and why David's tragic fall was only the beginning. What could a single piece of paper reveal? And what truth did David hide that would soon turn his silence into strategy? The tiny, one-bedroom apartment was cold, the thin walls doing little to block out the city noise. David sat on the edge of his cot, the old, sealed envelope in his hands. The paper felt thick, expensive, and the handwriting was his father's. His hands trembled. He was a man with nothing, holding a memory. He'd expected old photos, maybe a sentimental card. He made a cup of instant coffee, the last of his groceries, and carefully broke the wax seal. The letter wasn't a memory, it was a map. "My dearest son," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are likely in a time of great need. I always wanted you to build your own life, to know the value of a dollar earned. But I must confess, I hid your legacy from you. I was born a Harrison, of the Harrison Real Estate Group. I left that life, but I never disinherited you. I established a trust fund, but it is locked. The key is not a pile of cash, but a property I bought in your name years ago. A small, forgotten building downtown. It is yours, free and clear. I have also left you my personal attorney, Mr. Elias Thorne. He has the rest of the documents. Be wise, son. Wealth is a test, not a prize." The tiny, one-bedroom apartment was cold, the thin walls doing little to block out the city noise. David sat on the edge of his cot, the old, sealed envelope in his hands. The paper felt thick, expensive, and the handwriting was his father's. His hands trembled. He was a man with nothing, holding a memory. He'd expected old photos, maybe a sentimental card. He made a cup of instant coffee, the last of his groceries, and carefully broke the wax seal. The letter wasn't a memory, it was a map. "My dearest son," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are likely in a time of great need. I always wanted you to build your own life, to know the value of a dollar earned. But I must confess, I hid your legacy from you. I was born a Harrison, of the Harrison Real Estate Group. I left that life, but I never disinherited you. I established a trust fund, but it is locked. The key is not a pile of cash, but a property I bought in your name years ago. A small, forgotten building downtown. It is yours, free and clear. I have also left you my personal attorney, Mr. Elias Thorne. He has the rest of the documents. Be wise, son. Wealth is a test, not a prize." David spent his last $20 on a cab ride to a high-rise tower in the city's financial district. The lobby was a symphony of quiet investment chatter and clicking heels. He clutched the letter, his worn work jacket feeling paper-thin in a place built on wealth. He approached the front desk, his voice hoarse. "I'm here to see Mr. Elias Thorne." The receptionist looked up, her polite smile tightening as she took in his appearance. "Mr. Thorne is a senior attorney and manages the Harrison Trust. Do you have an appointment?" David shook his head. "No, but my father sent me." He pushed the faded envelope across the desk. The receptionist's eyes widened just slightly at the Harrison family crest on the wax seal. She picked up the phone, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sir, there is a David Miller here." "Yes," with the envelope. A moment later, a tall, impeccably dressed man in his late 60s stepped out. His eyes were sharp, scanning David from head to toe. "Mr. Miller?" he asked, his voice deep. "I'm Elias Thorne. I was your father's personal attorney. I've been waiting for this day for a very long time." Please, come in. We have 2 decades of investments to discuss. Thorne's office was larger than David's entire apartment. Books lined the walls, and a large window overlooked the city. Your father was a brilliant man, David, Thorne said, gesturing for him to sit. He was also a private one. He built a significant financial portfolio for you, separate from the main Harrison Trust. He invested heavily in stocks and real estate holdings. The dividends alone have accumulated into a substantial sum. David just stared, unable to process the words. Substantial? Mr. Thorne, I have nothing. My credit score is ruined. I'm facing bankruptcy. Thorne slid a folder across the polished desk. Not anymore. This is the deed to the downtown property, clear of any mortgage. And this, he handed David a sleek, black credit card, is tied to a bank account I opened for you. It contains $50,000, just for immediate expenses. The full inheritance, well, it's closer to 8 figures. David's vision blurred. A young, kind-faced paralegal named Anna entered quietly, placing a tray with a steaming mug of real coffee and a pastry beside him. Welcome, Mr. Miller, she said softly. David looked at her, then at Thorne, the first kindness he'd received in months. Why? David whispered. Why did he hide this? Thorne smiled gently. He said, when David proves he values his hands more than my money, he'll be ready for it. You passed his test. The property wasn't a skyscraper. It was a 3-story, red brick building tucked away in a revitalizing part of downtown, squeezed between a new coffee shop and a modern art gallery. The ground floor was a dusty, vacant storefront, its windows grime-covered. David, however, saw what his father, a renovation man himself, had seen. It had good bones. As he inspected the lock, a voice called out, "Can I help you?" An elderly woman, Mrs. Chun, was sweeping the sidewalk in front of the small bakery next door. I own this building," David said, the words feeling foreign. Her face softened. "Oh, we all wondered what would happen to it. The previous owner was a kind man, kept the rent low for us small business owners. These new property developers are trying to push us all out." David looked at her bakery, then at the for lease signs on other nearby shops. He saw Mark and Sarah's faces, laughing as they drove away from his own ruined business. "Ma'am, what if I told you I wasn't a developer?" he asked. "I'm a builder, and I'm looking for tenants who care about this neighborhood." He saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, and in that moment, he didn't just see a real estate investment. He saw his new beginning. David threw himself into the renovation, not just as an owner, but as a craftsman. He used his newfound financial freedom to hire a small, local crew, but he was there from dawn until dusk, working alongside them. The dust and sweat felt familiar, but the feeling was new. This wasn't a job, it was a resurrection. Anna, the paralegal, became a regular visitor. She'd stop by after work, ostensibly to have him sign trust documents or review investment reports from Thorne. But soon, she was bringing coffee for the crew and asking smart questions about the business plan. "You're really creating a community hub," she said one evening, looking at his plans for a shared courtyard. "Most property owners just care about maximizing rent." David paused, leaning on a sawhorse. "I know what it's like to have everything pulled out from under you," he said quietly. "I want this place to be a foundation for people, not a trap." Anna looked at him, her gaze soft. "My family almost lost our home when I was a kid. A foreclosure scare. I get it. What you're doing is good." He realized he wasn't just rebuilding a building. He was rebuilding his life, and for the first time, he wasn't doing it alone. David and Anna were having dinner at an upscale restaurant, finalizing the commercial leases for the building. "Mrs. Chun signed today," David said, a genuine smile reaching his eyes. "And Mr. Thorne is moving some investments from the trust to cover the final renovation costs." Anna raised her glass. "To the Harrison Real Estate Group's newest and kindest property mogul." As she laughed, a voice cut through the air. "Well, I'll be David Miller." He froze. Mark and Sarah stood there, dressed in flashy, designer clothes. "Wow, Dave," Mark sneered, looking around. "This is a big step up from that Roach motel you were in, cashing in your last retirement check." Sarah eyed Anna with a cruel pity. "Mark, be nice. He's probably interviewing for a job." David slowly placed his napkin on the table. The man they remembered, broken, defeated, humiliated, was gone. He looked at them, his gaze not angry, just empty. "Hello, Mark." "Sarah." He gestured to Anna. "I'm having dinner with my financial advisor." Mark's smirk wavered. "You're what?" "My financial advisor," David repeated calmly. "We were just discussing my real estate portfolio. I'm redeveloping the old building on Elm. The rent alone is going to be significant. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have business to discuss." He turned back to Anna, dismissing them as if they were strangers. Sarah stood in stunned silence, finally seeing the man she'd lost, not the victim she'd created. Anna was quiet as they drove away from the restaurant, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "That was incredible," she said softly. The look on Sarah's face. David glanced at her, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "It wasn't for them. It was for me. For the first time, I didn't feel broken." He reached over and took her hand, his grip steady. "Thank you for being there." Meanwhile, the silence in Mark's luxury car was suffocating. "What real estate portfolio?" Sarah finally hissed, her voice sharp. "He's bluffing," Mark snapped, gripping the steering wheel. "He's a bankrupt nobody. He probably got a small business loan." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the glove box to find her makeup. A stack of red-stamped envelopes spilled out. "What are these, Mark?" "They're all debt notices. This car, it's 3 months behind on its mortgage payment." Mark slammed his fist on the dashboard. "The investments just need more time. The credit lines are just tight, that's all." Sarah looked at the man she left her life for, seeing him clearly for the first time. A terrified fraud. "My credit card was declined today. You told me David was the failure. You lied." The motel room smelled like stale smoke and desperation. The foreclosure on their rented penthouse had been swift. Mark was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a frantic whisper. "I just need a small loan, a credit extension. My investments are solid." But the voice on the other end was firm, and Mark finally threw the phone against the wall. It shattered. "We're bankrupt," he choked out, sinking onto the lumpy bed. Sarah didn't look up from her phone. She was watching a local news segment. "A local business owner is revitalizing downtown," the reporter said brightly. The camera panned over David, hammer in hand, laughing with Mrs. Chun as they hung a grand opening sign. He looked healthy, strong. "David Harrison Miller, of the Harrison Real Estate Group, has turned this forgotten building into a thriving community hub." "Harrison," Mark whispered, his face ashen. Sarah's laugh was a dry sob. "You idiot. You didn't just steal from a contractor. You stole from a Harrison." Mark's eyes lit up with a wild, desperate hope. "We can ask him for help. He's a good man. He'll pity us." Sarah stood up, grabbing her purse. "He's not that man anymore. You destroyed him. And now, we get to live in the ruin you built." She walked out the door, leaving him alone with his debts. The grand opening of the Harrison Hub was a street-wide celebration. Music drifted from the open courtyard, and Mrs. Chin's bakery had a line out the door. David stood near the entrance, not in a suit, but in a crisp shirt, watching families explore the new shops. He looked like the man he was always meant to be. Anna was at his side, her hand tucked in his. Elias Thorne approached them, a proud smile on his face. "Your father would be immensely proud, David," he said, handing him a glass of champagne. "This is a fine investment, but an even finer legacy." David looked at the bustling courtyard. "He gave me more than financial freedom, Elias. He gave me a purpose." He turned to Anna, his eyes full of warmth. "And he led me to you." Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "You built this, David. That trust just gave you the tools." David reached into his jacket and pulled out the old, faded letter. He'd read it 100 times, but now the words felt complete. He'd lost a life built on lies, but he'd gained a destiny built on his father's trust and his own 2 hands. He slipped the letter back, his hand finding Anna's. The man who had lost everything now had it all.